welcome to another edition of 360 Half Seconds. My name is Kia. I'm the VP of Sales for 360 Vet Sales. And with me today is our CEO, Matt Arena. Matt, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Kia, for having me.
Anytime. So before we get started today, I just want to remind everybody that's watching, we're going to be at VMX next week, VMX in Orlando. Our booth number is 2968. We hope to see you there. If you have any questions about your practice, what the market looks like, what the process looks like, Matt and I will be there to answer all of your questions and give you any insight we can into the world of veterinary practice sales. So please come see us. So Matt, I'm just going to remind you and everybody else how this works. You're going to get 360 half seconds or 3 minutes to answer my questions. And the clock is going to start as soon as I'm done asking the question. You ready to go?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Okay. So Matt, you and I take a lot of meetings with clients, and one of the things that we hear, quite often is, hey, I want to sell my practice, but I'm not going to do so until I get the same valuation that my colleague got a few years ago, or the same multiple is maybe a better way to put it.
Yep.
Can you kind of tell me why that's a myth?
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So to answer that one, I want to go into a little bit more detail than I normally would, but you got to understand how this market came about, because prior to 3 or 4 years ago, if you were selling a practice, there wasn't a lot of corporate buyer platforms out there, and you were looking at a lot of financial buyer type situations, meaning private individuals buying at a typical range of 5 to 7x. Okay. So the number that you multiply your adjusted EBITDA by being the multiple. What happened is we had a roll up of, I'm going to call it COVID roll up. You had everybody during COVID bought a puppy. A lot of people didn't know where to put their money private equity wise. There wasn't a lot of investment activity happening. And so money builds up and they're like, where do we deploy this investment? Well, what they were looking at is what industries were doing well. And at the time, the one industry that was doing really well and growing in a declining economy during COVID was the veterinary space. Practices were growing at 20 to 25% revenue. So that caused one of the bigger platforms to jump in, and one of the pioneers, and they thought, well, if we buy a bunch of practices and consolidate, when we go to roll over or recap our equity into a bigger fund or another buyer, we're going to be able to get a very, very high multiple. And that belief is what kind of set the bar for the 17 to 19x multiples that we had 3 or 4 years ago. Those days are gone. What kind of folks found out was those high beliefs, or the thought of, I'm going to go take my business to public and do an IPO, it just didn't happen. And so then multiple started slowly trickling back into today's market. So today's market, we're sitting at around 10x, 12x for a perfect practice. Perfect practice means you have 3 or more doctors, you're in a great location, thriving business with a lot of growth. We're also seeing some smaller practices go probably in the 7, 8, 9x range.
And that's good, right? Typically compared to other industries.
It's still higher than where it was. And that's what I always tell people. When you have a bubble market, I call it a bubble market, typically everything will settle back down into just slightly above where it was before this bubble happened. And I think that's where we're going. I think we're still in a good spot with this 10 to 12x range. And I think that we might settle there for quite a while. But the one thing that I've never seen, and I don't have a crystal ball, but I've never seen multiples go back to the bubble point. So I just don't believe that's going to happen. I would not advise someone to wait for that financial reason.
So what you're saying is basically, if you're motivated by kind of getting the most bang for your buck for your practice, then waiting is probably not a good strategy.
No, the only time I would tell someone to wait is if they're in a situation where, and I advise people, come talk to me. I'll look at your stuff. I'll tell you what I think. Some practices are in a situation where maybe their pricing's not set at the right levels. Maybe they're missing a doctor. There's just variable things that could be happening that restricts them from optimizing their valuation. In that situation, you come talk to us. We'll give you our advice on, does it make sense to wait or does it not make sense to wait? Because sometimes it does.
Okay. And Matt, I appreciate you going through all that, because I think each practice is unique. And so, you don't want to paint everything with the same brush. So thanks so much for kind of breaking that down. It is fascinating. It's true. People love their pets. No matter what happens in the economy, people will take care of their pets.
And family members.
Family members. I agree.
Yeah.
So thanks again to Matt for joining us today. Again, we're going to be at VMX coming up this weekend and into next week. We would love to see you there. I'm excited to see some old faces and hopefully meet a lot of new people as well. We're going to be giving away a cutting board. So if you do come by, make sure you sign up for that. Matt's going to make it for you himself in his workshop. And last thing is, we're going to be doing this a lot. So if there is a topic that you want to see us cover here, if there are questions that you have that you're curious about and you want to see us cover them on 360 half seconds, we're happy to do so. Just go ahead and email me. It's Kia, Kia at 360vetsales.com. Yeah.
Or the other thing I want to add, Kia, just leave a comment when we post this on LinkedIn, or if it gets on our YouTube channel, leave a comment. We'll be happy to answer it there. So whatever you like.
There you go. Well, thanks so much, everybody. Hope to see you in Orlando. If we don't see you there, we'll see you next week on 360 half seconds.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.